What's up YouTube? Austin here with Falcon Concepts, and today we're going to be doing some front end work on the Tallywhacker. What is the Tallywhacker, you ask? This is the Tallywhacker. And so is this. The Tallywhacker is a 1984 Chevy C10 that we're going to be doing a 12 valve Cummins swap and building this custom tube chassis for. So let's get started and see what we can do. Let's get you up to speed on the Tallywhacker itself. So here's what we've got so far. We've got the frame rails bent out of 2x6 120 wall. The next step for this frame rail is going to be doing the fish plates, where we got to grind all the welds down and all the pivot points put in. Fish plates, which are more or less reinforcements, outside linear reinforcements on the frame. Weld all those in. But before we can do that, right up here on the front where the cross member bolts to the frame, it actually tows in and then back out. As you can see right now, we've just got two straight frame rails. So we're going to get the C10 in, take the front end out from under it, get some measurements on our pivot, and then get to cutting and welding. Let's get to it. Go on a diet. Okay, so you've probably got a couple questions by now. The first question is probably, how does somebody even start making a tube chassis? Well, the first thing you got to do is you've got to map out your frame, meaning you've got to get your measurements on your pivot points, your length, your width, etc. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to jack up this frame and get it all on some jack stands so that we know that it's a reliable, stable source. You don't want to rely on your tires. So we're going to get this thing up in the air on the plane, and then what we're going to do is we're going to pick a couple reference points, such as the bed mounting right in front of there, under the frame, or under the cab, I'm sorry. And you're going to want to make sure that you get it level both in your front to rear direction and your left to right. Once you get to that point, then you can start taking your measurements, checking your angles, and go from there. The next question is probably, why'd you bring it in backwards if you're going to be pulling the front end out? Well, the reason why I do that, and it may seem pretty obvious to a lot of people, but one of my favorite sayings is, if common sense were common, we'd all have it. So the reason why I pulled the truck in backwards is because once I get the front end out from under it, as you can tell, my best lifting tool is my tractor, so it's going to be awfully difficult to get it out of the shop if I were to pull it in the other way. So that's why it's in backwards. Let's get the front end tore apart, cleaned up, and we'll go from there. Hold on. Before anybody goes in and says, well, that's not a tube chassis, it's made out of square. This is made out of 2x6 rectangular tubes, so Okay, so we've got just about everything disconnected from the front end. The only thing that we have left to do is to take this one cross member bolt out and cut a couple brake lines. It's gonna make a little bit of a mess, but you know what? If you're gonna make a mess, make it a good one. So let's get to it. And there you have it, front end's out. So let's get it outside, we'll pressure wash it, clean up whatever we don't need, and then we'll get her set up by the frame and get some measurements. Okay, so we got the cross member on the sawhorses so we can pressure wash it. Once we get it washed kind of briefly, we're going to start disassembling some of the things we don't need right now. Some of those things are going to be obviously the shocks. We're going to remove the upper and lower control arms. We're pretty much going to strip this thing all the way down to just the cross member. So what we're going to do in a future video is we're going to be building some tubular control arms, and I'll show you that obviously in another video. How to set up a control arm jig so that you know that all four of your pieces, uppers and lowers, are going to be exact. So once we get those off, we'll flip it over, get it washed a little bit better, and then we'll bring it back inside and I'll show you how to take frame measurements. Done. No. That was not very smart. So while we got the cross member drying, let's talk about our next step. Next step in this process is going to be bringing up the rear of the frame to level. So what we're going to do is we're going to set, I like to use two different levels just because I'm lazy and I don't like moving stuff. So the two reference points that I like to use are the rear frame section right over the wheel wells and then right behind the cab. Both of those are supposed to be even. I know most of these trucks, typically the frames are bent, whatever. This will get us close enough. So we're gonna get the floor jack, bring us up until we show level, and then we're gonna check our left and right and adjust our jacks accordingly. If you like what you're seeing so far, do me a favor, take this finger and hit that subscribe button. Okay, we got the frame leveled forward, back, left, and right, and I also took the level and checked both frame rails. Just because you have one frame rail level doesn't mean the other one is, so always make sure you check both. Now that we've got the frame leveled, the biggest part that I'm concerned with and what this video is about is the front end. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take my angle gauge, and I'm gonna sit here and figure out at what degree exactly and distance are we towed in and then towed back out. So let's get to it. The next thing we're gonna do is, now that we've got our frame marked, we're gonna take this plumb bob, hang it off our mark, and what I like to do is I like to make a mark on the floor, and then I'll mark the back of the frame or wherever my reference point is. There's 100 different ways to skin a cat. This is just how I like to do it. Frame marked, angles checked. Now all I gotta do is run a tape measure from the rear line that I made on the back of the frame all the way up to the front. That's gonna tell me at what point I need to start my toe in bend, or my toe in cuts for that matter. So the reason why I didn't check the front section of the frame is I know that the end points of the frame horns, whatever you wanna call them, are parallel with the outer frame rails. So that tells me that I'm gonna have to do an outside cut or a toe out cut at the exact same angle, and that's going to keep our frame rails parallel. So let's get that measured. We'll get it marked on the new chassis and go from there. That's all I've got for today. In the next video, we're going to actually cut the frame and fit the front cross member onto the new chassis. So there again, if you like what you see, smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.